Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 1000 Gurus. Today's guest is a friend of mine, Dorothy Ho, and I'll read her bio. At 21 years old, she dropped out of college and opened up her own dance studio, Charade Dance Academy. 6 years later, her academy has produced award-winning dancers. She's taught over 700 students in Garden Grove and is now expanding to offer an even more inspiring space for creativity. At a young age, she was placed in foster care due to her parents' incarceration, and Dorothy's life took a turn when her mother was released, and she was then raised by a single parent. Despite facing financial challenges, her love for the arts never wavered, leading her to graduate from the Orange County School of Arts in 2015. So this was such a wide-ranging conversation, and as you can tell, Dorothy and I are really good friends, so we kind of go all over the place. Main topics being the challenges that come with owning a dance studio, balancing hobbies versus purpose, managing personal finances, spending on what matters most to you, the importance of coaching and mentorship, and then we end off with some of Dorothy's best anime, movie, and TV show recs. So it was a really good conversation. It gets kind of a little bit heavy and vulnerable near the end, but I think you guys can really get a lot from it, and Dorothy had a lot of courage to share some vulnerable parts of herself and her story. So without further ado, thank you for tuning in and hope you enjoyed this episode with Dorothy Ho. Hello everyone, welcome to 1000 Gurus. Today, my guest is Dorothy Ho. Yay! So thank you so much for being here, Dorothy. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to go into a little bit about how I know you. So what I know about you is that we met in 2020. We both judged at the TET Festival. So this was like right before COVID. It was like February or something like that, for the talent show. But we had mutuals for a while, so I had known of you. And then I know that you have an extensive dance background. You've been dancing for a long time. And you've had various jobs until you followed your dream and then opened your own dance studio in OC, where I've also taught briefly. And my girlfriend has also taught there too, and some of my friends. And we catch up every so often, and we have such really good conversations about different topics. So it was an easy choice for me to ask you to be on season 1. So that's why we're here. Anything you want to add to that?
No, thanks for inviting me, JR. I'm excited to be a part of this.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. It's going to be fun. All right. So I think the biggest thing that I want to know about or ask about is, you following your dream, you opening up your own business. But maybe kind of, if I would love for you to walk us through that journey, right? Like your background growing up, how how you got to dance, and then maybe like what was the catalyst for you to start your own business and be like, you know what, I'm just going to drop out and start a dance studio. This has been my dream. Could you walk us through that?
Okay, one thing I do want to start off with is when my mom was released from prison, she had this lifelong dream of being a dancer. And this is a classic story that a lot of immigrant families, I believe, have. It's something that they couldn't accomplish. And so they have their children do what their dreams were. And so my mom pushed me into taking dance classes. And even though we didn't have a lot, she really, really forced me to do these things. And this is the next thing I really want to highlight, especially to, parents or like even children or teenagers, is I learned very quickly that you will like something when you're good at it.
Mm.
And so a lot of kids, they're forced to do piano lessons or drawing lessons, and they probably hate it or they're resentful even. But like as they continue to do it and they get good at that, that's when they're like, oh, I'm good at this. I like being the best at this. I'm going to continue this. And I think that's where the line that I crossed into that turned it into a passion is because I saw that, okay, I'm good at this. I like this now.
So you didn't like it initially, but
No.
right. So it was your mom's kind of desire for you to get into dance.
Yes.
And then you're like, oh, I don't really like this. And then you eventually got good at it, and then you enjoyed it.
And that's a question I get a lot, even at my dance academy. A lot of parents come in and they're like, I don't know if my kid will like this. And I would tell them, well, your kid doesn't know what they're going to like. They're just kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't even like, what's that word? When you turn 18, like you it's like you have the will to now choose to consume
Right.
alcohol or drugs or
Right, right.
whatever.
To do what you want, to have like that self-directiveness,
There's a word for it. Okay, well, either way,
self-determination. I don't,
when you're a child, you don't know what you like, and you won't know what you like, and so that's why you're in these classes so that you can figure
you can
out.
try new things and see what resonates with you.
So I think what I tell parents is like just find what your kid is good at, and then they'll like it.
Mm,
That's pretty much it.
that makes sense. And they have to. I imagine you'd recommend them to stay in because you can't get good at anything if you don't have some like consistency. You stay
Exactly.
into it for a little bit at least
Hmm.
because you can't like day one. Oh, I suck at this. Like everyone sucks at this day one, even
Yeah.
day two, even day 365. But if you can stick with something, then they might like it, or maybe they don't. So then, how do you is do you think there is a point where you can be like, okay, this is enough time, this is not enough time, at least as a dance teacher, studio owner?
I think this is somewhere where people can start accusing me of being like, oh, yeah, you're an entrepreneur. You're just trying to make money. But
Mm,
I do encourage everybody to do it for a year at least. And
yeah.
then from a year, you'll have at least your basic fundamentals to determine if you have the propensity for greatness or not in X, Y, and Z. And so that's what I do tell my clients and my friends. And even growing up, I have a lot of girlfriends and guy friends whom did dance with me initially. They didn't like it, so they moved on elsewhere. But then their parents, you know, let them keep jumping from thing to thing. And then now they're like the jack of all trades, but they're not great at anything. And I think in our American culture, it's like you want to be great at something or at least leave your mark in some sort of like, I don't know, art form. So,
Yeah, I think a year is fair enough to say like just try something for a year,
mm-hmm.
commit to it. You might not like it at first, but kind of like power through it to get to some level of skill so that you can make a better determination, right?
I agree.
Yeah. And I get it. It's like some of these parents might be like, okay, you're just like a butcher selling meat, right? You're like, okay, obviously you want me to buy this thing that you're selling. But to be fair, it's like you could do this with any other art form for your child, like karate or whatever, but you do have to stay with it for a little bit. Like just,
To get
yeah,
something. Yeah.
exactly. Like fundamentally, you should stick with something. On that topic, like, you were enrolled into dance by your mom and then you kind of developed a passion for it. How did that transition throughout your like early school years into college? And then like how did you make that switch into like, okay, let me open up a business?
So I guess brief history for me. Yeah, I learned dance when I was younger. I was mainly doing Vietnamese traditional dance for my community, and I think for us, we both know inherently humans are so social. So I love socializing with my culture and getting to know how rich the Vietnamese culture can present itself. And then as I was exposed to other forms of dancing that I learned to appreciate, that was when decided that, okay, now I want to be good at the American side of things. And so I discovered hip hop. And then I pursued this mentor who was open to teaching me up in West Covina. And then from there, I decided, okay, I really want to pursue this as a dancer and choreographer. And so that's when I switched gears from whatever art form I was doing before. I used to sing. And then I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I love. And while I was experiencing what it means to be like a dancer or a choreographer in that sense, I realized that teaching was something that I just had to do to make ends meet. And then that was when I decided, oh, yeah, like I do like to teach children and I like socializing with my community in that aspect. And so that's when I opened my dance academy back in 2019, late 2018. And then how I am here today.
So I know from your background that you didn't go straight into opening a studio, right? Like you had other careers, other jobs, just here and there, like you said, just to make ends meet. But then you said at a certain point, you realized that dancing was your passion and you really wanted to open a studio. How did you like make that jump or that switch, I guess, coming from someone who, let's say the audience is like, well, starting a business is very risky. You know what I mean? Like it's not a real traditional sort of path. And I say that with air quotes because for some people, like running a business runs in the family, right? Like people are like, yeah, they start their own business and it's not a big thing, but that's just a normal thing. But nowadays in industrialized society, it's like everyone, 90+% people get a job, right? Was it like that for you? Like you always knew you're going to start a business and you just had these sort of jobs just to pay the bills, or was there like a switch that was made? You're like, I'm tired of working these other jobs.
I think this is something I'm still experiencing as I continue to interact with my family and other people. But I've come to understand that my family, they just have to be their own boss. My mom, unfortunately, she was swept up in like pyramid schemes. But because of that, I was able to be exposed to like all these crazy leaders who are just dictate what they want to dictate, which is the key takeaway. And then even my family, like my uncle, he does real estate and he is predominantly his own boss. And so like in my specific family, I can see that everyone wants to be their own boss versus like other families who take the traditional path of like working for others, being a nurse, being a teacher.
Going to college and then
Yeah.
taking that professional route. Yeah.
Not to say that that's
Of course.
bad, but like that's different. So I know that when I was young, I was taught and encouraged to do something of my own and be my own boss. So that was always there.
You were in this family background environment where it's like most of your family was like self-employed or they had that mindset. So like for you, starting a business wasn't really like a big thing. It was like, oh, that's a normal progression in my like personal career.
I think there's one thing I want to distinguish really quickly before I forget about it. But one thing that I've kind of come to notice, especially with what I do, is okay, let's make this very clear.
Yeah.
I love dance, I love choreography, but I resent making choreography, and I don't enjoy dancing because of the standards that I know I have for these art forms or I have for myself when creating choreography. And so for me, I have Charade Dance Academy, and we were very fortunate this past season to win first place multiple times. And so my dancers are award winning. My choreography is award winning, but like the process behind that is just so dreadful. But I do it because I love choreography and I love the standard that that I have for myself and for other people. I don't know if that's if that.
So you love the art form, but I guess my question is like, so what aspects of that do you find dreadful if you had to pick it apart?
It's excruciating to have to sit there and like go through the process and think about what makes a winning set, what makes winning, like dance moves that has to be winning. And it's like,
it's geared towards a competition as opposed to like the artistry of just doing it because you want to express or create something that's unique. So.
See, that's very different too. I think like for me as a choreographer and as a teacher, and we talked about it earlier too. It's something that I have to do that's that with my best foot forward. So every time I do it, it's always best foot forward. How do I maximize XYZ? How do I get this to be the absolute best? And so I never create things just to express myself in this sense where it's like for fun or for the leisure. Like I take it very seriously.
So what you're saying is that the reason why it's excruciating?
Yes.
Gotcha. So it's like I said, it's not
demanding.
It's demanding. There's like an expectation. There's a standard. There's a purpose, which is to win or to compete.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the choreography you like to do is different. There's a different intention.
It's the idea that I said earlier with even my clients or people. It's like if you do something, you should want to be the best at it, and that's something that I put for myself, and I encourage other people to be the best at it if you're gonna do it. Which I know is also debatable. Other people do it for leisure, but I think that's just how I chose to navigate my life. Right. Yeah.
But you're saying that part is also excruciating?
Yeah. It's crazy needing to be the best at something or putting yourself in an art form where it's also just dance is naturally competitive. And so that's kind of, I guess, how my mind was honed from an early age.
That makes sense. And I can resonate with that too. I think like part of me as well sees like I'm very competitive by nature. Maybe you are a fire. But because we were talking about this earlier, like what avatar like nation do you fit in? Like fire, earth, water, air. And Dorothy was like, I'm not really sure, probably fire, but she wasn't really sure. So I was like, maybe if you're competitive, then probably fire. But she said she's a Slytherin too, so I guess that makes sense. So I guess aside from dancing and choreography wise, so I want to go back to the studio and being a business owner. What are some of like the lessons learned, or I guess maybe what are the biggest challenges of being like a dance studio owner / business owner, running the studio, but you also teach there and everything, and you're managing. What are the biggest challenges, and or what are some of the lessons that you've learned?
So we've been in business for 6 years, and I think this is something I mentioned with you even before, but I have a big problem right now of separating myself from my business. Right now, people look at Charade like it's me, and me like I'm Charade. And I've had several instances with clients of mine that that I have relationships with, and it'll be something really like trivial or small. It's like they're absent, and in our policies, we specifically state that if you're absent, meaning you did not tell the studio beforehand, then you do not get a makeup class. And so these parents, thinking that they're my friends or like I have a relationship with them, it'll go over their head and they'll ask me personally for the makeup later, thinking that I'll say yes because of our relationship. And it's hard for me. I have to think about like, oh, like, is this something that I should just give it to them because of like our relationship? Or should I just be hard on the policies because I'm protecting my business, which is separate from me? And so like right now it's trying to detach myself from my business. And then I have to also juggle that. So
Right. I think that's very insightful because, especially for professionals, right? When we work with in a personal, like with clients, with people who we see, and we can form those relationships like a friend, keeping that professional slash personal boundaries is very challenging, like you said. And it's difficult, but it's kind of necessary because it's like, look, I as much as I want to be your friend, this is a business, and this is like my brand, and this is like we had to stick to the policy for a reason, and I can't just be making exceptions for everyone just because I want to be friends
yeah.
with you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you're also like you're a very kind, caring, like personable person. I don't want to say people pleaser, you know what I mean, but like you are a very person who considers other people, so I imagine that might be hard for you as well.
I think ironically, and this is what a lot of I think entrepreneurs get cut for, but it's like, oh yeah, you're just money hungry. You just want all this from other people. But
Yeah.
it's like, I'm an entrepreneur because I care about people and I want to enrich these children's lives and I want to get these kids learning dance, something that I love, and share this with them. But yeah, it is hard separating like the relationship side of things and like the business side of things. And like the next thing I do want to do in the next coming months or years is to advocate more for like my boundaries as a person and as a teacher and like Charade's boundaries too as like a business.
I want to ask either if someone is trying to start their own business or maybe specifically open up their own dance studio, because obviously I know a lot of dancers and that's kind of like their aspiration. Do you have any pieces of advice or recommendations to them specifically? Or um, actually, we can just start with that.
I think the first thing you should know is the difference between being rich and feeling rich. I can tell you for a fact that I'm the last person to get paid. And I have chosen not to pay myself in the past year and a half due to renovations and paying other teachers first. So that's another thing too. It's like entrepreneurs, like, oh yeah, they're gonna make the top blah 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 percent. And it's like, no, I have not paid myself and I live off of like other means so that I can support this entity.
Yeah, the business, yeah.
But I still feel rich because I have this community of children and parents that I've built and curated, and I have a space that I could dance at, and also like let my friends come and hang out with me. And but it's like financially, I'm not rich,
Right. They're
like
different things.
yeah. And I think that's another thing too. I think a lot of parents or like my clients, when I say parents, I'm not talking about mine. I'm talking about my clients at my studio. They'll like think like, oh yeah, Dorothy, like they'll joke around sometimes and they'll be like, oh yeah, like you can cover the meal or oh like you can just cover this for my dancer or like whatnot. And it's like, oh my gosh, like again, separation of your business. So to you, if you want to open a dance studio, you really have to practice or knowing in your head to separate yourself from the business eventually or even from the get-go. So you don't take things personally or so that you can better advocate for your boundaries.
That's a perfect segue. So, on speaking on finances and feeling rich, it's our next topic. What I have in my notes, based on what we discussed, is indulging finances, spending sort of thing. I know you mentioned that you had like these, like one of your hobbies is the box art toy things.
Yeah, unboxing.
Yeah, yeah, where it's like you get a surprise thing, and you're
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, this is like one of my new hobbies, and I really enjoy it. But also kind of like balancing like budgeting personally, but also like what you want to spend your money on and being intentional with that.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to say though is I started unboxing art toys because it brought joy to me and I really liked feeling lucky. And that was something that I did for a while. And I had YouTube videos of me unboxing these toys and expressing how I think I'm gonna get this, but I don't get it. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna spend money and get another thing. So that ties in with my growing up, I definitely had a scarcity mindset where it's like, oh, like I should enjoy this now, or I'm not going to have enough of this, so I have to like savor this. And why it correlates with me now is as an adult, I make my own money, I have my own transportation, like I can just do it. And so it's like, oh, I'm going to do this now. So I buy all of it now so I know I can have it. And I think that's another thing I want to talk about too. These things ultimately looking back on, I know was also things that I would do to take away myself from doing what I needed to do, which is I need to make choreography and I need to dance more. And someone that I really loved also pointed this out to me. There was this phase where I would go rock climbing or I would put a lot of money and time into unboxing. But he pointed out that me doing these things was just taking me away from like learning more about choreography or learning more about this thing that I need to do and what I have to do. And I think that's something I want to talk about too, or at least articulate, which is like distinguishing hobbies that are taking you away from your purpose, what you're supposed to do, and then also maybe giving yourself these hobbies as a means to like decompress. So
I like that.
just
So,
to put it out there.
right. So like at a certain point, some of these hobbies could just be a distraction from
Yeah.
the thing that you need to do / your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But the balance is also like you do need to have those hobbies that energize you, that kind of decompress you, because you can't just run on all cylinders forever, right? You need those things that like charge you up, right?
I think that's something I'm still meditating on. And I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that?
So it's just finding the balance, basically, is what you're thinking
Or
about.
being able to at least distinguish when
Oh,
you're doing something to take away from like your ultimate purpose.
right. That's a very good question. I think the way I personally approach it is I try to maximize the amount of time that I spend on things that I know give me energy. And it's like those, okay, I'm not defining it as like hobby versus purpose. I think of it as, do I enjoy doing this thing? Do I get something out of it? Because life is short. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Enjoy your life, right? But at the same time, I know what my priorities are, which is like to be healthy, to make money to support myself and my future, and to spend time with people who I enjoy and build those relationships. But I also enjoy things like talking to people, stand-up comedy, bowling, dancing, just various things, right? And I think as long as I'm taking care of my basics, like I schedule going into the gyms, and then I'm obviously doing work and I'm doing things to support myself, but I'm also carving out time that charges me up, doing the things that charge me up, because otherwise I won't have the energy to do the things that I dread doing that I have to do. But I think what's hard, and I'm fortunate enough to have found the intersection of all these things where I can make money and build up passions on my hobbies, like build like a whatever. And it might not turn into anything, but it might. But I've supported myself financially where I can do these things freely and not be guilty about, oh, I'm wasting my time, because I know that my larger purposes take time. But also, if those things really charge me up, maybe that is my purpose. Like maybe these things that I enjoy is my purpose, because I know that my underlying theme is learning, teaching, growing, and helping others. And if everything that I do, I enjoy it and or can potentially make money from it, if I'm doing that, I'm not losing my day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I spend my day effectively. But so one thing that I want to ask you too is like is this idea, you said scarcity mindset, and man, finances and money is such a big thing that I love talking about too. And then we talked about like two books that I love and recommend all the time for money is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and then I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. Two books that I always recommend to people when they come to me for like asking for financial advice and like how to sort out their first personal finance. I'm not a financial advisor, but I love learning about personal finance, and I feel like there's a lot of ROI in helping people just understand the basics, because they can make and save thousands and tens of thousands of dollars down the line. And I know you've mentioned that I recommended a book and it helped you out a lot, and or the show over
Yeah.
Meet. So check out my book summary website, marleyanacruz.com. I do a lot of book summaries. I love learning. But anything you want to share on like what you've learned and how you've applied it in your own life?
Yes, you were the one that showed me the Netflix show by Ramit, and it was life changing. And yes, so like your recommendations are always amazing, and it supplements my life, Jr. So, and that's why I love you as my friend. Like your perspective and your thoughts on like finances, relationships have always contributed to like how I navigate my life. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank
But
you.
yes, what was your question?
Basically, like, what was your takeaway from that, and how do you apply it in your own life?
Okay, so call me crazy,
You're crazy.
but okay, but I love experiences.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing, especially as an entrepreneur, that you're trying to curate. It's this experience that you can share with others. And so, off of that topic, Ramit heavily talks about like, if this is something you want to experience, then it doesn't matter. The price doesn't matter. You should just do it. And so, for me, the experience is opening these blind boxes and having that excitement. So, I'm going to do this or I'm going to spend money on this because it gives me this experience. And that's how I navigate my life. But it can be a hindrance. So this is what I do specifically. I love eating food. And sometimes I will over order food, but I will force myself to eat it because I believe the best experience and enjoying it is now when the chicken is crispy, hot, and it's like, you got to eat it now. And so I would overeat, or it would be detrimental in that aspect, right? So there's a balance there that we can probably talk about. And then I want to share this really quick. In the beginning of the year, I realized that, oh, as a dancer, I need to look the part. I need to look fashionable. And so I started to scroll through Instagram looking for haircut styles. And sooner or later, Instagram was catching on that I was in the market for a hairstylist. And so as I continued to look through hundreds and hundreds of profiles in like that week, I began to realize the people who stood out to me were people who were advertising like an experience. And so naturally, I eventually chose a person who advertised the best experienced. And I went to them and I had the best haircut of my life. I thought I looked really great afterwards. And I can go into the details maybe later on like the key factors that played into how I chose this. But that whole experience of choosing the best hairstylist, I like immediately put that into my business. And so right now we're rebranding and I'm trying to rebrand my dance academy to also curate the same like what experiences I want to give to my kids and publish that and market that. So that way other people who are like me can come to my studio and be like, yes, this is the experience I want my dancer to have. And that does stem directly from your recommendation of the Netflix show. So yeah, you're the catalyst. So thank you, JR.
Thank you. I think you're giving me too much credit, but I'll take it. I appreciate it.
You were very pivotal. That show, your recommendations, that's kind of what happened. And that's why I tell you, like, you helped me navigate my life and you don't even know. So
Nice. Yeah, thank you for that. One of my biggest takeaways from the book, and I think you've touched upon this that I just want to reiterate, is conscious spending is what he calls it, Ramit. And that's what both of us do. Like, I also think about the same thing. Like, is what I'm spending worth my money? Because I want to maximize my money, right? And so if it's not going to make my life better, or easier, at least it's going to give me an experience that I know that I want. But with that being said, the balance is that from the top down, I have my finances set up so that I have the leeway. Like I'm fortunate enough to be able to splurge a little bit on these experiences, like yourself, and be like, okay, this thing is worth putting money into because it's a good ROI, like a good return on my investment, because it's going to make my life easier, save me time, whatever. But I think it's important for people to understand that, like, if you're conscious, if you're very intentional with how you spend your money, you can make that money back and or improve your quality of life. But you have to be intentional about it.
mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, if someone else's splurging could be useless to you, but to you, your splurging could be something that's really good, but someone else doesn't like, and that's totally fine. Like for me, like I have no problem spending like $10 on popcorn at the movie theater because I love the movie experience and I love going to the theaters. But someone else will be like, yo, that's a waste of money. And I agree, it is a waste of money. But I'm also set up my finances so that I can splurge on that because I know everything else is taken care of, and I'm not going to go look into my bank account and be like, oh, that $10 popcorn really like took me out,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to transition to our third topic, which is the importance of mentors. You mentioned it briefly in your dance journey, like I think high school or something, where you found a mentor, and I think you've had multiple mentors. And actually, to the point of what I respect about you is that you're always open to learning and growing and finding mentors and learning things from other people. I think that's what sets you apart from a lot of other people who are probably in the same place in their life, is that you're constantly trying to grow and learn, which is why I think you are at the place you are now. So I think you're successful, and
Oh,
you're gonna get more successful as you go along because you have this mindset. What I want to ask is, how does one find a mentor, keep a mentor, or like how do you get the most out of a mentorship? Because I know that you said that's been a big thing on your growth experience.
I think the first thing I want to start off with is a mentor should be someone who's generous with their time and it's not transactional. So they shouldn't be expecting anything from you other than to pour out and I guess, yeah, to
Generosity,
give.
like to
Yeah,
give to you, right? To help you
exactly.
grow.
And I have the privilege of experiencing that in my life. And that's how I met one of the biggest mentors in my life who is still very influential to me today, even though he's not currently a part of my life right now.
Having a mentor is important.
What
Like
they should be.
they should be, and they
Yeah.
should be generous. So how does one go about finding a mentor, like finding the right one? Like, there could be people who be like, oh, I can help you out, but then it might be transactional, right?
Then I think that's the case. It's like seeing if they're transactional or seeing how much time they're willing to donate. And if they don't tick off those boxes, then you're better off looking for another person who can generously pour their time into you.
Are there any like specific characteristics that you might advise or recommend people look for in looking for a mentor? And maybe this is too broad because I know that we're talking about like dance mentorship, right? But like I guess mentors can come in various shapes and sizes. Um, but I guess I'm sitting in for the audience when it's like, okay, well, a mentor sounds great, but where do I start?
You know what? I can just say it from my personal experience.
Mm.
For me, growing up, it was like I was always looking for a mentor. I was always looking for a teacher to take me under their wing and to show me the ropes. And I asked for it. So I would go out and I would ask for it a lot. And a lot of people don't have, a lot of time. So they would give me a little bit and then move on with their life, or they wouldn't keep in contact. Um, but I was fortunate enough to eventually find one who was going to stick around for the long run and was going to show me everything that they knew. And now that I'm on the other side of things, so I'm 27 now, and I'm about the same age that my mentor was when they found me. And I'm kind of sitting around and I'm like, wow, no one's coming to me. Like, no one's asking for me to mentor because I will and I can and I want to. And I'm constantly looking for like the next person who can take over my business or who wants to be in my position, but no one's asking for it. And so I guess what I'm saying is you should just ask and continue to ask if you're looking for a mentor. Like, no mentor is going to go on their knees and be like, I choose you to be my next blah, blah, blah. Like, you should ask for it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first step is asking.
Mhm.
Just
Or
wrap it
and
up.
or identifying, I would say, if I can throw this in, like if you have an idea of what you want, success leaves clues. So you can easily see the people who have the results that you want. You'd be like, this person's doing something that I think I want to do, and
Mhm.
they're successful at it. Maybe I should figure out if a mentorship relationship is possible and ask and learn
It's a two-way
and
street.
come with humility, right?
Yes. Like you got to ask for it. And then that also opens up people who don't even know that they could be mentors. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, I can.
I think that's very important. And also to, I guess, even in my next, okay, so I like this idea of mentorship and I kind of relate it to coaching because, okay, so I'm a relationship coach as well. But in my life, I found the importance of mentors and or coaches is so huge for me because I can try to like figure something out and bang my head against the wall for weeks, days, years, whatever. But when I was like, okay, look, I just need a coach, I need a mentor, and then I can find someone who's doing that and learn from them, it's shortcut the process so much. And like kind of the point of this podcast, right? Which is if you just ask the right questions, people are willing to give. Like you said, I'm willing to be a mentor, just no one's asking me, but people are willing to pour into you. You just have to look for them and ask. And they can give you the foundational principles of how to get to where you are, where you want to be, or get to where you are currently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a friend of mine just on Yerson. He's a dance instructor. He teaches beginners as well. And if you just go to someone who's an amazing dancer, for example, and then they can like, look, I can lay you out how to become a better dancer. If you don't come to class, if you don't ask for it, if you don't put yourself out there, you're never going to get that sort of pathway that'll shortcut this process.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I totally believe in like coaching, mentoring, and all that stuff. And then being a mentor when you see those opportunities too. I don't know if it's the same for you, But for me, like as I'm putting myself out there and learning and growing, sometimes people come to me and they ask for advice, and I'm like, oh, great, I have experience in this. Or sometimes it's just I see, people 3 steps behind where I was at before when I was younger, and I can listen to them. And then sometimes they'd be like, they'll be finished venting or whatever, and then they'll ask like, "Do you have any advice?" And I'm like, "Sure, here's my perspective. You can take it or leave it." And then they're like, "Wow, you actually know a lot. Like, I want to learn more
You
from you."
actually know.
Meaning, like, my own philosophy is I don't try to give advice unless people ask, but I'm always here to listen.
Hmm.
But then naturally, that turns into people being like, "Wait, you actually know a lot more," and wow, you're like a wealth of information. And so, kind of naturally, we form that relationship.
Hmm.
At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, I mean that's with us too. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, Jared, you knew this? Wow, why didn't I ask you before this?
I think it's like I don't want to like I want to be the type of mentor that I would want to have, which is not like, hey, look at me, I'm so smart and successful. I'm like, let me just live my life, be good and successful in my own way. And if I attract those people who want the same thing, great. But if
Mhm.
not, I'm just here to live and just be a good friend. And or anything else on how to be a good mentor. I know I kind of rambled a little bit.
I think as long as mentors know, um, or at least if you happen to stumble being one, it's like just be generous with your time and your expectations too. Like this is a non-transactional thing, and I think that's something that us too in our social interactions now, like a lot of people are very transactional, and I can see a lot of people getting hurt in this kind of thing where they're giving and they're not seeing anything returning, and it's like, well, no, like you got to remember this is like you're giving, this is a gift.
So then why be a mentor? Like, what do you get out of it? Because it seems like it's just a give, give, give. It's kind of like I have a parallel, which is like parenting. Good parenting is kind of like that, right? Where it's like you give, you shouldn't expect anything in return, but naturally as humans, we kind of desire that reciprocation. And also a good, I don't want to say relationship, but for me, like with how I see some of my friends or some of my littles on my dance team, like who I see as like little sisters, little brothers who I want to be that sort of mentor or person just to like give into them. I have to force myself to like be like, okay, it's not transactional, like you said. I just want to give and be there for them. Otherwise, it's like I don't need to expect anything in return because that's not the relationship that I want, right? Like I have friends who I can rely on, I have family and all this other stuff. But if I'm trying to give to someone, I can't be that transactional. But I guess like the first question, then what do you get out of it?
It's so funny that you say that, and that brings us back to what we talked about earlier and what I'm trying to make my business better at, which is you get the experience. And this might tie into like religion, but like you have a life, God gave you life, or I believe in Christ,
Yeah.
right? I believe in Jesus. And I believe that we were given life so that we can experience love. And that's like the end goal of all this. Like you need to experience love, and that experience being a mentor is that part of the equation. Like you get to experience this love, and as a parent, you get to experience this love that you can't get from anywhere else. Um, and then, so yeah, that's pretty much very, very short answer. Like that is the gift.
The gift is the giving.
Yes.
The
The experience
experience
of love,
of love. Yeah.
seeing what you're capable of, but also seeing with a loving heart what they can do with this knowledge that you've shared with them and whatever.
Yeah, I like this because I think love is a topic we could talk about for the entire episode, for one entire episode, maybe in a future podcast. But I'd like to get your thoughts on what love is. We kind of touched upon it a little bit because I also have my own thoughts on it, and we've talked about this before. So, like, how do you define love then in this context?
I think for humans, or like for us, and this is me, now I'm speaking from like God's perspective. Like God loves us, and like what God does is all loving. And so that is the pinnacle of like love. And for us as humans, like sometimes when we express love or when we give love, it can be tainted with like our sinfulness or whatever. And so if I could just nitpick the things that I've experienced that I consider love, it's always characteristics that I can see pertaining to God, which is, like I said, when you love generously without strings attached, no transactions.
Not conditional.
Yes. Yeah. Unconditional.
So, how do we? I mean, this is a big question, obviously, and maybe we won't answer it. So, how does one love like that unconditionally in the context of friendships, relationships, mentorships, whatever?
I think for me, myself, personally, I can't imagine anyone giving this kind of love unless they know who God is, or unless they know who Jesus is. But I also know a lot of people who don't know Jesus, who don't know God, and they can do these things. And I don't want to talk crap about them, but I like to think that maybe they're doing that because they also like it when people praise them. And that's why they do it. It's like, oh yeah, like I did this, I gave this, I do this. And even though it's not transactional to that person that they gave it to, but they brag about it, so they get validation. But like, I think that's another aspect of why, like, to me, unless you know God or unless you know Jesus and you know the pinnacle for love, then you can do this without needs of validation, praise.
The praise, the societal stuff, or what accolades, because it's intrinsic. It's actually like the rewards you get internally, which is like knowing that it's the right thing to do. It reflects like God's love and all the other stuff. Yeah, maybe for part 2 we can go deeper into that and stuff, because I think it'll be a fascinating topic. Anything else on that before we go to rapid fire?
No, let's do it.
Okay, cool. This is the section Dorothy was dreading the most, which is kind of funny because it's rapid fire. It's usually easy, but she's like, I don't know how to answer this. I'm like,
Because I'm thinking about maximizing these questions
She's
that
a
you're
business
saying.
owner. She's like, I need to get okay. So it's the first question. The billboard question is: if you could put a sign up for millions of people to see, what would it say?
Okay, so this is like something I'm so excited to talk about because I saw this stupid question. Okay, it's not stupid because it's dumb, but it's stupid to me because I couldn't answer it
Right, your
fast
thought
enough.
process. Yeah.
But okay, so I used to be a constant church goer. And I'm trying to go back to church now. But anyways, back then, I've heard one of my pastors share that when they make speeches, or I guess the sermons, they need to be broad enough so that everybody can connect to their message. And I think that was when I was like, oh yeah, like, okay, so what I need to put on this billboard needs to be broad enough for people to embrace a positive change in their life. Because before I was thinking like, oh, I could just say something like believe in Jesus or love Jesus or Jesus saves. But like, when you read that, like, what is that? It doesn't inspire something.
How effective is that?
I don't think it's that effective.
Yeah.
So now to answer your question, my epiphany is the billboard will say embrace the transformation. So that way people can grab that positively and then take action from there. So it also encourages action, and it's also vague enough to apply to everybody who reads that. So I think
up to interpretation too.
Yes.
It's not specifically this transformation, but it's how they interpret it.
And it's going to be positively, whether the transformation acknowledges like that you're doing something bad and then you have to transform to do something good, or you're transforming into like getting more healthy or doing XYZ. So I think that is positive enough to extract value from.
Yeah. She's a business owner, guys. This is how she thinks. She thinks of ROI.
Oh my gosh.
Next question. What is your favorite failure or something challenging that you learned the most from?
There's a lot that comes into mind, but I think the one failure that I keep thinking about a lot is actually pertaining to my business, specifically with how I interact with my clients. And so there is this one instance. Okay, if you're my client at Charade, I'm not talking about you, but
definitely not you.
It's not you.
It's someone else. So 100% of my clients.
This is someone else who happened when I first started the business. And I think they were unhappy with how I like navigated my curriculum. And so they expressed their unhappiness with it. And I really wished that I just told them, hey, that's how I do things. And if you trust in this process, then you can be here. Or if you don't, then leave. But I was apologetic and I was like, oh, I'm sorry that you didn't like this. I'm so sorry. And I was just expressing like a lot of like remorse for it. But I wish I could do that again and not be as apologetic and be more of an advocate for myself and be vocal about what my boundaries are and what I'm doing to serve. I don't know if it's my favorite failure, but it's something I have thought about a lot. And it's something that has happened in like bits and pieces throughout being in business for 6 years.
Right. It's something that's recurring that you're learning and you've been reflecting on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a biggest regret, and or if you could reduce something, what would you do differently?
Okay, this is more personal, and I don't know how people will see me after this, but I'm just going to be honest and transparent. I was in love with my ex-partner for many, many years. We were together for 9 years. And after a while, I started to see that our relationship wasn't heading towards marriage like how I thought it was when we first began dating. There was a lot of promises for marriage and it coming soon. And I thought they were going to be very successful. And so I stood by very loyally. And I would like to believe I was very, very loyal for a large part of our relationship. But towards the end of a relationship, when I began having doubts, I didn't express that to my partner at the time, that I was having doubts about our promises for marriage. And I was having doubts about them being able to financially take care of this hypothetical family that we could have in the future. And I started to think like, oh, like my skin, my looks, like everything's so finite. Like I needed to act. I needed to go out and figure out what else could be there for me. But I was too much of a coward to voice that with my partner. And so unfortunately, it did lead to me cheating. And that's something I 1000% regret. And if you're listening to this, I really hope that you can be very open and transparent with your partner, because I did love him very much, and I think that's something that I regret and I wish I just could do differently.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's a very vulnerable thing to open up about, but to your courage, I think that's very valuable to the audience as well. It's like saying, "Hey, we all make mistakes, and I definitely regret this. Hopefully, you can learn from my mistakes." Which is, I think, what you're saying is communicating what your needs are, communicating with your partner, and trying to figure that out, and don't let it lead you down a path that you're gonna regret later on, right?
Yeah, I was largely a coward, and I I feel like I enabled my partner by not telling them how I felt or being transparent with like what I think this is leading towards. And I also know like this is very bad. Like, oh yeah, I'm a business owner and I'm sharing all these great things about myself, but like this is something I was like, oh no, like this is the truth, and this is something I do want you to be able to learn from.
Thank you for that. Okay, this might be the same, but you can interpret it differently, answer differently, or we can move on. If you could give your younger self advice, what would it be now? Any time period, any age.
My younger self advice, okay, it would be towards myself when I was first learning to dance, because I was so resentful for my mom to put me into something I did not even like. I wish I could tell her to like, shut the fuck up, Dorothy, just like fucking do this and like get it over with. And like, and it's gonna be fruitful. Um, and I think you see that a lot with like kids now. They're like, oh, what's that? They're throwing tantrums and they're head banging, or they're like stomping their feet because they're so angry. But like, I wish I could just tell these kids or myself back then, just do it and it'll be good. Like this is gonna be fine. So
Yeah. Which is, I'm sure you tell your kids that all the time. Like, just do it.
yeah,
But again, it's hard to get that message across.
yeah.
Makes sense. Any habits or routines that are key to you getting the results that you have now? Like any strategies, mindsets, advice that you would give to people?
I think I'm different in the sense that when I see something that needs to be done, I just do it, and I do it right away, and I make the plans to do it. So I put it into my schedule like, okay, this is something you have to do repetitively. And so I think the first aspect is knowing if you want to change your life, you have to actually make the plans to add it to your schedule, to wake up earlier for it. Um, so, and I think that's what sets us apart from Olympians too. I think I heard this from somewhere, but like someone was saying that the reason why Olympians are so great is because they can do that. They can just set aside the time instantly to do this or to practice this to get better at this. And whereas a lot of people, they sit around and they don't take initiative as fast. And something as small as that, it's not even like your propensity for greatness or anything. It's just how fast are you at taking initiative?
Who would you call successful, and how do you define success? Like anyone come to mind that you're like, that person's successful?
I think you're very successful, Jared.
Thank
But
you.
I can't brag about you on your own show. That defeats the purpose. So my next person I'm going to talk about who I believe is so successful is my dear friend Ronnie Hay. He is also an entrepreneur. But what I admire about him is that he's so mature in navigating his personal friendships, his and his work. Like he is so good at knowing when time's up. And the way that he goes about his time is like how he goes about money. It's like this, if this doesn't maximize my time, or I guess, is that even a phrase? If this is not adding value, then I'm going to stop this immediately. So he knows when to cut things off. He doesn't care about like how it would make other people feel per se. Not saying that he doesn't
Care
care,
about people, but
But
He's intentional with like maximizing his time and energy.
yeah, he advocates for himself and he's putting himself out first, and he cares about himself more than the other people. And I think that's something that I struggle with. Like I care about more how other people feel, and I think that's also what led to my relationship with my ex partner to go bad, is because I cared more about them versus like how that would present me or put me myself in the future. So I consider them very successful.
Okay. So people can put their needs first and do all the things like that, like maximizing their time and be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. If time and money weren't an obstacle, what would you be doing now?
If time and money wasn't an obstacle, then I would be doing what I need to do, which is to create choreography and to make my business better. But I guess to answer your question and to entertain the spirit of it, I think what you want me to say is I should be traveling right now. I should go to Japan.
I don't want you to
and
say
I
that,
and I and
but
I
that's
should
honest.
I think it's like multifaceted. Like it's like
Right.
what you wish you could do. I wish I could travel, and I wish I could experience all these other things that God put us here to experience and to love and to serve. But like I think, like I was saying earlier, like I'm kind of distracting myself right now from doing what I need to do. So it's too late. I got to do this, and but I want to do this.
Right.
So
How do you spend most of your time?
how dare you call me out?
I'm asking.
How dare you?
Question. You could be like, I actually don't even dance at all. I just
Okay, well, and this is again for you if you're wanting to open a dance studio. A lot of my time, I wake up in the morning and it's all geared towards making my instructors better, keeping them accountable, taking care of my clients. Like I wake up and the first thing I think about is, oh my God, I need to answer these emails, or oh my God, I need to plan out this curriculum for these students. And so I'm doing a lot of serving right now. And what I wish I could do is, I guess, which relates to the other question, is I wish I could work out again and like do things that I want to do and things that I like to do. So that's another aspect where, yeah, I'm doing a lot of serving right now.
right in your business. One of my first guests, my friend Ronnie, no, different Ronnie, because he's an entrepreneur too. He has several businesses, and he's like, when I'm not working on my business, I'm worrying about my business. I'm
Yeah,
like, so
that's exactly
as a
what's going
business
on.
owner, I'm sure you can relate.
Mhm.
It's just constantly on your mind.
Yes, it is. Like even right now, I have things that we have to do after this. That's like, oh, I got to do that. So
It's all good. Just a heads up for, I guess, business owners too, that it is not a full-time job. It's more than a full-time job. It's like
It
an
is.
all the time job.
yeah.
All right. So last rapid fire question: any favorite books, movies, videos, articles, media resources, whatever that you recommend or share the most?
So I love experiences. And right now, there's this one anime that I really enjoy watching, and it's called Oshinoko. If you
On my
haven't
list.
heard about it, long story short, so I don't spoil it, it follows the life of these people who are wanting to be famous, and all like the struggles that pertain to uh the crazy things that happen when you are wanting to be famous, whether it's like the politics or like the real life,
Famous, like in an idol sense.
an idol sense, an actor sense. And it's like things that can happen to you when you're pursuing these things, whether it's like you could face suicidal thoughts or politics or like the aspect of that people don't see, but what you wish people knew. And so I think that experience is something that motivates me to advocate for myself in my own workplace. So I really like watching that show. I really like watching sci-fi and like gory stuff. So I enjoyed the Alien Romulus movie recently that came out, and I also am watching Altered Carbon right now, which also talks about
Thumbs up.
which also talks about like this whole like thought experiment. So I really love thought experience. But other than those things that I'm watching currently, like my best things that I would recommend was there's this anime that I watch with my ex-partner that he introduced me to called Psychopaths, which also explores the same concepts of like what happens if the government can figure out you're about to commit a crime before you even do it. So the ethical question is, do you kill them? Do you like incarcerate them before they even do XYZ? I also really enjoyed Death Note.
Good one.
In terms of animation, I love animation. so much that like when I watch movies, it always tells me where we are and how we're doing in terms of storytelling. So some of the best movies I've seen recently are like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Blue Eyed Samurai on Netflix, where it's just kind of like that idea that I was talking about with choreography. Like I hate doing it because it makes me I have to put out my best work, and I can kind of understand the struggles with the people who make those movies or those shows, Blue Eyed Samurai and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's like, wow, like that's imagine creating something like that. Like you probably hated that process just to make something so great. So yeah, that's it.
Nice. You are a treasure trove of media recommendations. I love it. And you're very philosophical. I like your thoughtfulness.
Thanks, Chair. Are you gonna actually watch them though?
No, it's on my list, yeah. Them meaning like everything you mentioned. I will say Ocean Oko is at the top of my list, and because you recommended it. And I've heard good things.
Good.
Cool. Any questions? So let's wrap this up. I like ending with gratitude. Shout out to my mom. Taught me that. So Dorothy, what are you grateful for?
I spoke about him a lot, but I'm grateful for my mentor or my past mentor and my past lover. I think he really, really inspired me to continue where I'm at right now. And he gave me the laying foundations on how to pursue choreography and how to treat other people. And even with my relationship with God, like he was the one who opened my eyes towards this idea of a God and somebody greater than me. But besides that, I'm grateful for my family, and I'm grateful for the space that I have right now to give back to my community and my passion.
Any final ask for the audience or any final takeaway you would like them to have from this conversation?
Okay, this might be so stupid, but like Jesus loves you and God loves you, and seek him. And even for me, like I shared earlier, like I'm struggling right now coming to church and being a part of like this community that I know God wants for Christians or for us. But even in spite of that, I still fight for my relationship with my God. So
I love that.
That's it.
It's not stupid at all. I think it's good. Speak what you feel like is important to you.
Yes. Thank you, JR.
Cool. So where can people find you? I know we'll have links to everything, but you want to do any plugs for where they can find you, reach out if they want to?
Yeah. So I do have a business, Charade Dance Academy, but only reach out to them if you want to learn how to dance. But if you want to reach me specifically, then you can contact me by my email. It is premiumheartva@gmail.com.
All right.
Cool.
Your inbox is going to get flooded then. I'm just kidding.
Sure. I'll be your mentor if you ask.
Yeah, she's open for a mentorship. All right. So that's it. Thank you so much, Dorothy, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. To my audience, thank you guys for joining. Hope you guys learned a lot. Just a reminder to be kind to others and especially yourself. And also that you can always learn something from someone as long as you just take the time to listen. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.